Hi everyone, it's Nick. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, in this video today, we are doing another edition of Roasting My Subscriber Spaces. This is where you all submit photos, sometimes video, of your home to be shared on the internet and for me to roast slash, gently provide some constructive criticism for some things that I think you may want to consider to improve your space. When you emailed me, which by the way, if you want to, you can email me at roastmyspace@nicklewis.ca. These people have sent me a little bit of some notes as well, which I always love to see. I also just want to mention, remember people in the comment section, everyone was super kind last time, which I really love to see, but I just think it's worth mentioning these are real people with real houses. This is their real homes. So before you get mean, feel free to say what you want about me. Like you can be mean to me, that's fine. But if you don't be mean to these people, like in the comments, they didn't ask for this. So let's just consider that before we type in the comments. Thanks. So first of all, I want to thank Leather Honey for sponsoring today's video. So Leather Honey is a company that makes leather cleaning and conditioning products, and they are a family-owned and operating company based out of Virginia, and they have been since 1968. So they really know their stuff when it comes to leather care products, which is important to me because if I'm treating something like expensive leather, I want to know that they know what they're doing. What I love about this product is that a single 8-ounce bottle is enough to clean a large leather sofa, a leather chair, a whole car interior, and dozens of shoes several times over. I just used a dab of Leather Honey on this leather stool that I have, and now it is as good as new. But you can also use this for clothing and any leather furniture that you have. Maybe you have a leather couch or something like that. This would be perfect for it. So I've touched on the importance of choosing really high quality leather goods that are going to wear in over time on this channel before, but I haven't really talked about how important it is to care for that leather long term to make sure that it lasts you for years to come. So see all the ways that Leather Honey's cleaner and conditioner can help you prolong the life of your home's leather by clicking the link in the description below. Now let's get back to those subscriber roasts, shall we? Okay, so first of all, here we have a living room, family room situation from Maraha, and she has reached out to me. Now, she specifically mentioned, and I'm gonna show it in a second, that there's a dining room that's sort of flipped around, that's sort of connected to this area. But this is a little bit more of sort of a casual family room area, basically, where sort of the kids watch TV, and she really wants to connect these spaces a little bit better, which, because as I said, it's a little bit more of a formal living room next door. So we are just taking a look at this one here, but trying to see if we can make the spaces blend better together. So let's take a look at this family room. Okay, so right away, so it's kind of interesting that Maraha mentioned that she really wanted this space to feel a little bit lighter and also a little bit more cozy, I think was really important to her. Okay, so the first thing I notice is that I feel like all the furniture is thrown right against the walls, which I feel like right away we could really benefit by bringing some of that furniture together and sort of connecting it in something that's a little bit more of a family room. So the couch might be fine there. You might want to consider bringing it forward. Definitely, I would also advise that you put those front two legs a little bit more further onto that rug, because the rug sort of feels a little bit like, this giant yoga space kind of in the middle of the family room. And I feel like it would benefit to create something with some better space planning to bring those together. So it's a little bit more of a conversation area and a little bit more intimate. I think that would be important because those two occasional chairs that you've got thrown over to the side there, I know what you're trying to do. I think you're trying to create a cute little conversation area, but I think it's just spatially so close to that living room. And with the furniture being all tied together, I just think it would be really beneficial if they moved in closer to the center to create something a little bit more conversational between. I also will say a couple more things. So I think, first of all, I think that the table over by the wall and the mirror, I think those are fine. I think you're fine to keep those over there. So again, if you bring those two chairs forward next to the couch, create a little bit more of a conversation area, I think you open yourself up to a couple of things. So right away, I think like what would be really cool is if you brought those things together, that sort of ottoman in the center there, I'd love to maybe consider that being in a different material. This is all reading as sort of very beige. You seem really sort of stuck in that warm red, beige, orange palette. Which is fine, but I do think having maybe a different material, maybe something like a harder surface, a stone, something like that might work really well in a coffee table, just to give a little bit of variety there. I would also also really love to see some more height in some of the furniture. I think everything just kind of goes together on one plane. I would love to see some variation in height. I would say maybe even consider bringing in some side tables. You can bring in some lamps. You could use a floor lamp, or you could use table lamps on top of those side tables. You could also consider maybe bringing in some plants, some sort of life into the space, because right now it's just reading really sort of beige and warm, which can be fine. I would just love to see a little bit more variation though, personally. I think it would go a long way to make the space as you wanted to feel a little bit more intimate and a little bit more fresh and light. Right now it feels really heavy because it's in a very sort of rich, warm and dark traditional sort of palette. So if you want to create something a little bit more modern, which is what you mentioned in your email to me, I would consider bringing in sort of some lighter tones, as well as some variation in the height, as I mentioned, as well as some variation in sort of the materials. Just looking a little samey, but overall, I think it's a good space. I think you've got a really, I mean, it's nice to have that much room. You mentioned that window has a gorgeous view, so definitely take advantage of that. I think you've done a really great job highlighting that. Overall, it's a really good space. Yeah, if you actually turn it around and you take a look at sort of that more formal living room, I think you've got a little bit more of that variation there. You've got some variation in heights, you've got some lamps there, that looks really cool. There's a lot more going on in that living area. I think you could extend that a little bit more into the family area and do a little bit more with it. And you know, some plants, some life, some height. I think it would really benefit both because it would really connect the two spaces well together. Okay, next up is Shayna. Let's take a look at her sort of living room and dining area situation that she has right here. Okay, so first of all, you know what I'm gonna recommend right away, and that is a rug, looking at a really beautiful rug. Now, Shayna mentioned that she is in the Middle East and therefore makes it really difficult to have a rug, or she finds that different rugs have not really worked for her. You know, there's a long history of rugs in the Middle East, so I'm going to guess that that there are rugs out there that will work for you, Shayna, because you know that is exactly what I'm going to recommend. I actually do think that you really do need a rug here. Would love to see it. And the reason for that is because you've got tiled flooring, and I don't love tiled flooring in a living area. Personally, I like them in kitchens, like them in bathrooms, laundry rooms, whatevers, but I don't love them in living areas personally. Just kind of my preference, because they create sort of a really hard, cold surface, which you have said in your email is a problem for you. This is where I think you could really start to add a lot of soft textures into your space, something a little bit more grounding that would create sort of a buffer between that really hard stone tile and your room, because I think that is going to make your space feel a lot friendlier and welcoming and a little bit more interesting. So I would recommend that you put a rug down there. I'm sure you can find a rug that will work for you. Yes, there are some materials like jute that might be a little bit more difficult, potentially, depending on your circumstances. They're not maybe always the most practical rug to use, but I think you could absolutely invest in a nice wool rug, and I think it would probably be okay. So yes, you know, take my advice or leave it. You said you've tried a rug and it didn't work for you, but my advice is get a rug. Okay, second thing I noticed right away, it looks like the dining room light is not above the dining table. Could just be the perspective here with the camera, but that does not look like it's centered over the top of the dining area, which it definitely should be. That may be tricky because that may cut off your living room a little bit more. This sometimes is a challenge, right? Like you have to make a decision. Do you need to move the light potentially over, which could involve some electrical work? Or if you kind of want to go for a little bit more of a Scandinavian style, tends to be a lot more popular in those countries, is they'll just kind of like hang sort of a little connector to basically move the light to where they want it before they hang it down over a dining room table. That's a little bit more of an easier fix than going in and actually moving electrical in the ceiling. But of course, the easiest thing would just be to slide your table over. So if you can make that work into your space plan, that's obviously going to be the easiest solution. But I do think that needs to be centered over top there. Next thing, okay, let's talk about the couch. So the couch, I don't love it. You said in your email, by the way, that you liked the fact that I'm blunt. So there you have it. I don't really like, you know it's well documented how you're kind of doing a lot of things here. First of all, it's a bit of a marshmallow couch, which I don't love. It's been well documented on this channel. I don't love the marshmallow. It looks like it's in that microfiber material, which I have also mentioned in videos. I don't really love. I just don't think it's a very luxurious fabric. I could be wrong. It could be something different. This is just a photo, but it looks like it's that microfiber material, which I don't really love. And it may also be a recliner. So those are three things that are, I'm not 100% sure about all of them, but I still don't love it either way. So I do think it's just kind of leading, it's one of the reasons why your space is just looking very blah and beige and brown. And so I do think there could be some room to create a little bit more of an interesting color palette here. The couch being involved in that, the rug being involved in that, to create something that's a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more interesting and just more color and more personality. You watch my channel, so obviously you're a fabulous, fantastic person, because I don't have boring people on my channel. And so obviously you are, you know, I want to see more of your personality being brought into this space, because I do think that there's a lot of room for you to add some more color and a little bit more personality. Consider painting those walls as well. The trend continues of me doing these reviews where people insist on just always painting their walls white. Consider painting those walls maybe a different color, right? Really developing a tight color palette that's beyond white, black, brown, gray, beige, and to something that's a little bit more interesting, a little bit richer, and just something that's giving me just kind of a little bit more personality than what I am seeing here. Also, I think those curtains, you know, they're there, but that's another opportunity for you to play with texture and another opportunity potentially to play with color as well. So I would consider those. I think the biggest takeaway here though is just to really understand a little bit more of what your design style is. I think that's a really great place to start. And also developing something of a color palette. There's room for mistakes in design and learning. And I think really identifying those two things will go a long way to help you in crafting a space that's a little bit more dynamic and interesting than what you've got necessarily right here. Okay, next up here, we have Jane. Now Jane is a person who has created something that you all know I don't care for, which is a theme room. And her theme is UFOs, which she then says, was I successful in creating a UFO themed room? And I'm gonna say, basically yes. So here's what I think that you have done well. Subtlety, first of all. That's what I think is really important, that you really wanted to express in your space something that you loved, which is UFOs. Listen, I don't really get it, but I don't have to because it's not my space, it's yours. And you were able to do it in really subtle ways because this doesn't kind of come in right away and scream at me that this even is a UFO themed room. I'm getting a little bit of the bedspread, looks like it's kind of got a bit of a UFO theme, but it's all very subtle. You've definitely used some black and white and beige and brown. I would love to see a little bit more color if you can manage it. I think that would be really interesting. Again, the like brownish, beige-ish white walls are definitely, I don't think I've seen anybody do walls that aren't white. Have we seen anybody do walls that aren't white at this point? I'm not, maybe a little bit, but not really. Okay, I'd love to see that. I think the gallery wall, I did a video on gallery walls, by the way, feel free to check it out. I'm not a massive gallery wall fan myself personally. It looks a little tight. It looks like you've got a lot going on in that really small space for that well, actually, it's not really a small space. It's actually quite a large space. It's just there's a lot going on in a really sort of tight, crammed space. I think a little bit more white space around that gallery wall, so maybe work on some of that. I think some planning on the wall might really help you. You might even be able to, or might consider taking away some of those pieces on the gallery wall so it's not quite so overwhelming of a feature. I think that might go a long way for you, honestly, is just really tighten up kind of where that gallery wall is. I think it's a good size overall, but just take some pieces away and work on some of that spacing and that planning for that gallery wall. I think it would really, really help. But overall, you love UFOs. You wanted a UFO themed space. I don't always advise a theme, but you did it anyway, and good for you. You ignored me, that's fine. You know, it doesn't scream UFOs. It doesn't feel overwhelmingly weird to me, and I think that is the sign of a successful theme, when it doesn't overwhelm the senses as soon as you walk in. Okay, and then speaking of themed rooms, we have Stephanie. Now, Stephanie, I loved her email. She was very much like, I did a lot of this stuff before I watched your channel. I really value your opinion. Thank you, Stephanie. But she admits that she's like, you're not gonna like a lot of the decisions that I made. She's like, I know you don't like kitschy, farmhousey things, and I know you don't like themed rooms. Stephanie's got some themed rooms, so let's get cracking. Okay, so first of all, we've got the bedroom, which she has sent us here, and this is a sort of African sort of savanna theme that she's picked up here. We've obviously got some animal print, which I don't love, but again, it's not about me. Well, it kind of is, but it's not really. And then of course you've got the lion, and you've got, what have you got? The small art back at the thing there, which of course is going to be all brought into this theme. If you love the theme, I'm not here to necessarily stop you. I think that some of the spacing of the art here feels a bit off. This was something I think that also came up, you know, in the last video as well, about spacing, or sorry, proportion of the size of the art that you choose. So I think that some of the art looks a little bit probably small. The lion, actually, it's hard to see in the photo, but the lion probably might be the right size. I can't really see. But some of these smaller art prints, it looks a little bit like you just sort of found kind of a tiny little nook in the corner and said like, oh, I can squeeze something over there. And I think just I would like to see that, you know, you don't have to cover every surface in a picture. You can just leave some white space just to kind of sit there and be neutral, to let the sort of eye rest. And that way, the art that you do put in your space sort of really has a really big impact, and it's really there with intention. And I think some of the art pieces are a bit small, probably for the space that you have. Okay, next up, we have now left the bedroom and we're in the bathroom, which has another theme, but it's a different theme, because Stephanie, not only does she like African savannas, but we've now moved from the savannah and we are now in the ocean. Okay, because, and I've said this before, people love the coastal, like, octopus seashell theme in a bathroom. I don't know why. Is it just because there's water there? I don't know why everybody's really so big on it, but anyway. Okay, so Stephanie, I'm going to work under the assumption that you do really want to kind of keep the theme. You know, you have to approach these things with tact, that just because, you know, take the person for who they are and then work from there, right? I'm not gonna just superimpose my own personal belief system around themes onto you necessarily. So I think some of these pieces lean really heavy, and they're really heavy-handed with the theme. Personally, like the octopus mirror, for example, in my opinion, I think you'd be better served just choosing a regular mirror and then bringing in more of the ocean theme in more subtle ways. There are tiny little touches that you can do that I think will scream coastal, that are not leaning so heavily into feeling like props, you know what I mean? And I think that's something that is definitely happening here. Looks like you've gone for the live edge countertop, which is fine. And I think, again, if you really, like, that to me is an example of something that works for the theme, because obviously you are leaning a little bit more into the rougher woods. Maybe it's almost like a, you know, beach wood sort of vibe that you're kind of going for in your coastal ocean sort of space here. So that's fine. I think if you want to keep that, that makes total sense. It's a fixed element, it's obviously fixed into the space, so you're probably not thinking about getting rid of it. And that's fine. I think that actually can work really well in what you're going for. But I think it's these kind of props that are kind of in there that I would consider sort of going for something a little bit more modern, or a little bit more timeless and simple. And then things like those more subtle things like the live edge sort of sit in the background and kind of tell the person, you know, this is a space that is a little bit more coastal. This is themed, but it's not so heavy-handed that it's going to feel a little bit kind of cheesy. And I think that can sometimes happen when you go too far. So if I'm being specific, I would say the color choice, the live edge, totally fine. The rough baskets, you know, consider putting those in there. That can be really cute. Again, going for that really sort of rough, worn in sort of texture on there, I think that can work really well. I would stay away from things like maybe some of the art prints, the mirror, and maybe even the sink, which is fixed. And so I don't know if there's really anything you can really do about that, but you know, that's just something to maybe think about. And then, you know, just kind of freshen up with a little bit more sort of elegant and modern things that might make sense to sort of remind you that it is still a bathroom and that it's still a home, right? So bringing in some, I'll link to a bunch of things down below in the description, but maybe consider a little bit more some elegant things that make sense in a bathroom, like accessories or whatever that you're bringing in that are not so heavy-handed on the theme. Now, Stephanie also sent us a picture of her living room and her kitchen as well, which I'm also gonna show here. Again, we're seeing sort of the same kind of thing that we saw in the bathroom. We're seeing that theme of the beach being brought into the rest of the home. Okay, so a couple of quick notes here. First of all, love that you actually put a wall color that isn't white on your walls. So first of all, I want to say great job. I think you've really got that sort of teal, aqua blue sort of color that you're working with, which can make a lot of sense. That's what clearly what your color scheme is, and that might make sense for coastal. But I do still think that there's a couple of things here that we might want to point out. First of all, it looks like the pillows that you've chosen, kind of like what we saw in the bathroom, I think are a little bit heavy-handed on the theme. I think that, I'm again link to a bunch, there's lots of different pillows that you can bring in that will make sense for a coastal space, but don't lean so heavily into the theme and don't feel a little bit juvenile, if I'm being quite honest, which can happen when, you know, you've just kind of gone so heavy-handed. As well, I think the table works for you, that's fine. I think the proportion on the art piece behind, that's a really big wall, so that is really tricky. This can be a great way to bring in other wall treatments that you might want to consider when you have such a huge wall like that. Sometimes finding kind of a big piece of art, which just sort of is kind of the default, can be really difficult to pull off. And so maybe considering some wall treatments, I think can really, really work in that space. I will also say that the gallery wall, I think you've gone for the same size over and over and over again. I'd like to see a little bit more of a dynamic gallery wall in there somehow, where you have sort of some different shapes and sizes that are going to make sense. I think just because of each piece being so small, when you group them together in such a formal and constructed way, I don't think it looks as good as it would be if maybe you kind of either did one of two things. You either sort of space it out into more of a free-flowing gallery wall, or you sort of upped kind of the scale on some of those pieces. So maybe instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and like 20, 30 photos on a wall, you might have like 4. And they might be a little bit larger in scale, but they might make sense when you sort of bring together as a unit. It makes a little bit more sense for that wall if you maybe had like 4 larger prints that you put on that wall. I think that would be more successful. You have a couple options there to consider that I hope would work for you. Overall, you know, you've got a theme, you're riding it, and that makes sense. If that's you and that's what you love, go for it. Just maybe dial back some of the theminess and go for something a little bit more timeless that's gonna make sense for that style. Okay, so next up here, finally, we have Alice. And Alice here is a scientist who also loves interior design, and she wants us to check out her space. So let's take a look at it. This, honestly, like first, it's gorgeous. I think you've done a really great job. The wood is effectively used here to create something that feels really cohesive, right? So you've got the wooden flooring, you've got the mirror that you've got in the back there, you've got the 2 chairs, as well as this desk that you have on the side. I think using all those different wood pieces around the room really helps guide you around the room and sort of connect the dots so it looks really cohesive. I think you've done a really great job there, because a lot of the other pieces that are in the room are quite neutral, and my eye at least, is immediately drawn to all this sort of wood that you have, which is very beautiful, and it sort of guides me around the room very effectively. So I really, really, really love that. It looks like for the coffee table. Now, okay, so let's talk about that coffee table. It looks interesting to use the choice of black, which I think makes more sense when you start to look at the other area, when you kind of take this room at a different angle, which I'll show you in a second. Looks like what you've done is you've taken 2 coffee tables and sort of smushed them together to create the right size. That can totally work. I think that makes a lot of sense for you. It's not my personal choice for a table, but this isn't necessarily about what I personally really love. I do think it works here. I don't love the piano black. I just generally don't really love that material. I think I would love to see something in a stone. That would be my ideal choice, just because you do have so much wood in this space that I think putting a wooden table may make sense, but it may not be the best decision, just because, you know, you've got so much going on here. I do think it was a right choice to not choose the wood, and I like that you went for a little bit of a contrast in material. Would I have chosen something like a travertine? Probably, but that's just me. I'll be honest, when I actually first saw this photo though, here's what I'll also say, is I thought that this was like a small apartment, and this was maybe sort of 90% of your home was kind of in this room, which, by the way, how lucky are you to have these like beautiful like tall ceilings and windows and whatever, so much natural light, looks beautiful. But I thought that this was a really sort of a smaller home. And the reason I thought that is because it looks like it's a very multifunctional space. That's what I wanted to talk about here. You've got a living area, but then you've also got kind of the bistro table and the 2 chairs on the side. And then on the other side, you've got a desk for someone to work at, which I think is really interesting as you have chosen it to be a very multifunctional space. I was kind of surprised because I realized this looks like it's a townhouse or even maybe even a full single family home. And I kind of thought that was an interesting choice on your part. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the home, but it may be something to consider to move some of those different functions or those different items or furniture pieces to other rooms to sort of really kind of zero in and make this the living room, the social sort of gathering space in the home that you're kind of intending for it to be. You can even put a couple of different ottomans over there if you're worried about it looking a little bit too cluttered or a little bit too cramped. But this is overall a gorgeous space. I would love to come over sometime and share a drink. So just invite me and I'll be there. And of course, I'm also just going to spin the little camera around here to show, I do really love that you went for that sort of charcoal color back there. It's kind of like this really beautiful sort of black dining area. I feel like you've been watching House of Valentina. That feels like a Valentina room, doesn't it? If you guys watch her channel, you know what I'm talking about. That feels like a little Valentina space that you've got in the back over there. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I love that little area. It sort of makes sense now, a little bit more of why you chose the black for the coffee table to maybe tie that in with the room. They're not close enough, in my opinion, to really sort of make a ton of sense, but I do still love, looks like you got some moldings that are gorgeous over there. It sort of looks like a little dark and moody little jewel box that you've kind of got in the corner. So I really love that. I think it's really cool. And I love that the wood banister matches the wood flooring and the wood that you've chosen in the living room. It's a gorgeous space. Okay, so that's it for me for today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm gonna link here to the playlist of my subscriber reviews. I have done 1, this is part 2, probably gonna do more. And again, if you're interested in submitting your own space for the internet to see, then just submit to roastmyspace@nicklewis.ca and I might review your home in my next YouTube video. So thanks a lot. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, bye.